In a very hostile region called White Ridge, there was a valley. For most of the year, the valley was filled with abundance, but in the second half of the year, it became filled with snow and ice, and cold and despondence. It became harder for animals to survive. Even the best of fortitudes of the creatures that lived here would be tested in times like this. Only the fittest survived. Many offsprings of hardy creatures would pass away. It was no rare thing to have your offspring not survive this cold and long winter. Creatures like this female burrow basilisk have spent many months preparing to lay eggs or to give birth to their offspring, only for the hardest and most unforgiving parts of the winter to reclaim her children. Every now and then, someone's luck would turn around. A female Chomp Treader moves stealthily through the snow hunting something. Her two powerful front legs lift ever so slightly and then descend down to the snow. The snow was soft and powdery, which made stealthy hunter's movement that much more easy. Her prey, a creature that usually isn't accustomed to this type of biome. An older male Tuscaleo, who usually visits the desert, had been stranded behind his herd. Apparently he got caught in the winter before he can move on, probably sickly, or not as young as he used to be, enough for him to be nimble enough to catch up with the herd. Left behind, he was all alone. The female Chomp Treader was actually quite surprised that she was able to get as close as she did to him. He's probably blind. It would be a mercy, killing him, taking his life, so that she could feed her new ones. Whipping her tail and quickly charging, she effortlessly cuts through the snow as though swimming through it, and used her large jaws, which were open very wide, to slam down on the creature's head, severing it from its body. What a quick and experienced kill. The female then took the body in her mouth and went back to her burrow. It's surprising how a creature as large as an earth elephant could yet be so stealthy and so gentle, as she opened up her mouth and delicately let the remains fall out of her jaws. Her babies would have something to eat when they hatched, but out of her 3 eggs, the 2 that started shaking and showing signs of life just went still one night and then never moved ever again. There was one remaining, the smallest of the bunch. The Chomp Treader had no hope that this one would be any different, but as a mother, she was inclined to see it through. The chances of survival were so low, it would have made more sense for her to leave, which is what most Chomp Treaders would do. But for some reason, she was different. She was a runt herself. No one thought she'd survive, and she proved everyone wrong. So she came back into her burrow and sat down with her back to the entrance. She could feel the cold blowing up against her. She shivered, and the spines around her dorsal area trembled with each kiss of the cold, until she heard a crack and chirping. As she opened up her eyes, she cocked her head to the side and waited. She cooed and made a deep rumbling noise that's barely audible. And out came her baby, defeating all odds. He was a tiny thing. The female looked down at him with a most gracious stare, and very gently she opened up her jaws as her teeth glistened, lining the perimeter of them. The young one looked into her mouth and then looked up at her into her eyes. At first, it's as if he didn't know what to do, but after he heard his mother make that instinctive coo, he too allowed instinct to take over, and so he lifted up his wobbly little tiny legs, trying to balance himself with his reptilian tail, and fell over and rolled closer towards his mother. She let out a deep, purring noise, probably a chuckle. She waited patiently with her jaws still open, opening them ever wider still, feeling an inexplicable need to trust this reptilian predator. The baby got steady on his feet and crawled into his mother's jaws. She gently slammed them shut. With 2 sets of nostrils, she allowed ventilation through her mouth so her baby could breathe, and keeping her jaws closed, she slept with him in her mouth throughout the night. Every morning, the tiny Chomp Treader's mother would venture out and try to find something to eat, but the pickings were slim. It was getting even colder. She would do this routine every single day almost, unless it was too cold or there was a blizzard roaring outside. "Mommy, when can I get to go outside?" asked the little baby. When you're old enough. Your skin is much too thin, and your muscles are barely developed. You would freeze instantly if you were to go out there. But I'm large. I lose my heat much slower, my love. Ever the inquisitive one, the young Chomp Treader questioned his mother. Well, why can't I just go in your mouth like I always do? It's so cold whenever you leave. Oh, I know, Rogo. But for me to hunt, I can't have you in my mouth with me. It's much too dangerous. Besides, the burrow is the safest place for you. If something were to happen to me out there, it's much safer knowing that you're in here. But it's really cold in here too. Trust me, it's much better than being out there. But when you're a little bit older, only a little while longer, you will be able to come with me. The baby Chomp Treader, named Rogototh, knew that he had to trust his mother. He didn't want to. He didn't want to listen to what she had to say, because all he wanted to do was to be with her wherever she went. He didn't want to tell her that he was paranoid every single day about her not returning. But he kept it to himself, and he wanted to be strong for her. And so, when she went out the next morning, White Ridge, he waited for her as always. But something was different. She took a while to come back. Usually his mother would go out for what for us would feel like 5 to even 7 hours at the most, and she would either come back unsuccessful or with a treat. Pickings were very slim, but there was still food in the area enough to encourage the female Chomp Treader to keep going out. But Rogototh waited and waited, and the more he waited, the more into despair he fell. He looked outside the burrow, and he felt the chill of the wind hit him like 1,000 spikes to the face. Immediately he withdrew back in the den. This was a mistake. He should have stayed in there, as his mother had always instructed him. The wind catching his scent ever so slightly, just in that moment he stuck his head out and carried it quickly somewhere close to someone else who was waiting. Somebody else who was hungry. Another creature who was accustomed and well fitted for the warmer times out of the year prowled through the snow very quietly. Her bushy tail fanned out behind her, and the feathery ears on her face were like wings. She had an amazing sense of smell, but even more so, she had fantastic eyesight. And so when this female owline saw the very stark green color contrasting against the white snow, she knew there was food to be had. Immediately, she started loping towards the area, to the entrance of the burrow where Rogototh had only been seconds ago. He saw something very, very distinct in the snow. He knew something was wrong. He went back into the back of the burrow. He let out a high trill noise. Whenever he sensed danger, his mother told him to do this, and she would come running, but she hadn't been there in a while. And he had a feeling his mother was not coming back. She's never taken this long. It's basically been 2 days, and now predators were starting to sniff him out. Usually her scent was enough to keep them away, but the cold had even eaten that away. Rogototh shivered in his little baby legs, looking at the entrance to the burrow, waiting for something to pass by. And he was not disappointed, as 2 very massive paws ended up in front of the burrow entrance. Then it was followed by a muzzle and 2 large eyes descending to look inside. The creature let out a weird purring noise, as though delighted with itself for finding such a kill. Its fangs were shown. Rogototh let out his screaming noises again, but this time it encouraged the predator to attack as she started to crawl her way in the burrow. Something happened, and she quickly took her head out. She looked somewhere and started hissing. A roar and hissing noise sounded back, and Rogototh was overjoyed. He knew what that was. That was his mother. The mother quickly snapped her jaws, and off went the owline. The owline knew that this was not the time to fight. Energy was hard to come by as it is, and she could live for another day to get something to eat, even though her bones were protruding, and she was basically just skin and bone. She would hold out hope as long as she was alive. She'd be able to fight another day. As soon as the female Chomp Treader headed back inside the burrow, Rogototh was just beside himself. "Mother! You're alive! You're okay!" He went to hug her as she held down her large face to his and nuzzled him. It felt so relieving as her large body immediately made a block towards the outside world and cut off all the cold that was seeping inside. That's when Rogototh noticed something. His mother had long, dark gashes lining her body. She was slashed across her face and bleeding. Part of her eye was injured. She was in a bad state and limping. "Mother? What happened? Are you injured? Why do you look like that? Why did it take so long for you to come home?" "I'm so sorry. It didn't go as planned. I tried to go further out. Rogototh, my child, there's almost no food here. And I was going to suggest that we should leave, but you're so young. And you wouldn't make the trip. But we'll talk about it tomorrow. I just really need some rest right now." "Of course, I understand." And with that, the female Chomp Treader lay down to sleep. She didn't even have the strength to open up her jaws and let her baby inside. But it's okay, because old Rogototh was concerned with was that his mother was there. He felt her body, and it was nice and warm, and it was a welcome feeling after he suffered alone for so long. The sound of ice breaking and snow crackling outside is what woke up Rogototh, and when he awoke, he realized that it was cold again, and for a split second he panicked thinking that his mother left, but as he looked over, he saw her body still lying there in the same position that it was from last night. She was heavily asleep. He was so happy that she was there. He tried to snuggle in closer to her to get warmer, and he realized that the reason why he was cold wasn't because of the air from outside. It wasn't because she had left. It's because her body was pressed up against his. It hasn't been this whole time, but her body was now cold. Rogototh called out for his mother, trying to wake her, making his chirping noise. "Ma, why are you so cold? What's wrong?" After he tried a few minutes and realized there was no response, Rogototh became confused and very worried. He wondered if his mom had fallen into such a deep sleep that she wouldn't be able to wake back up, and he knew he had to do something. He would have to leave the burrow. Maybe she was hungry. And so bravely, he went outside the burrow, squeezed past her, and tried to look for something to eat. The whole place was covered in snow, and he was scared. What if the owline came back? What if something else came back? And then he heard some munching. He looked to his right, and he saw a very large animal. Something as big as his mother. It was very peculiar looking, a large body with 4 long, sturdy legs, a long tail, and an even longer neck. The creature seemed to be humming to itself, a noise that Rogototh found to be very annoying. Rogototh went over there to see what the creature was chewing on. If the creature was chewing on something, it must mean that there was food there, and so Rogototh waited at the bottom to see if this very large sauropod-like creature would drop anything. When it did, Rogototh inspected it, and it was a very small, spherical object. When Rogototh put it in his mouth, it had a slimy consistency. He bit into it, and flavor and liquid exploded in his mouth. It was much better than eating the snow. His tummy had been racked with pain for a while. He went without food for a long time, and his mother probably even longer, since she was also exerting herself. This would be perfect. He picked up some more that fell, and then he felt the floor shake. When he looked over, to his horror, the creature had seen him. It let out a low guttural growl, and its dark blue eyes focused on him. What do you think you're doing?" Rogototh was terrified, and he ran back to the burrow as fast as he could, but the creature was so much larger that one of its strides made it end up in front of him in an instant. "Very rude. Your kind thinks it can just take and take and take, does it? Oh well, maybe I had to teach you some manners. How about that? You're just as small as the things I'm eating, and I don't usually eat meat, but... Well..." The creature looked up to the sky whimsically and thought for a moment.
It's not like we have a lot of options, do we?
Then it bent down with its long neck, with its jaws wide open and flat teeth lining the inner part of its mouth. Rogototh screamed and said, "Please, please, don't.
Begging? There's no way for you to go. Aren't you a Chomp Treader? Aren't you guys supposed to be big and tough?"
I don't want to be big and tough. I just want to help my mom."
Well, I don't care about that. You're stealing my food, young one. And since you've eaten it, I'm gonna have to eat you.
Well, it fell anyway, and you're eating most of it at the top. Can't you just let me have these too for my mom?" The large grape scorer had a change of heart. Usually, in a situation like this, he would eat little critters. He's a vegetarian, yes, but as he said, these times were special circumstances. But something made him curious about this young Rogototh that was talking back to him.
Show me where your mother is. Maybe we can have a talk. I feel chipper today, and the more flesh the better.
Rogototh did not know what to make of this, but he went back to the burrow. Very close by it was, and the scorer followed him. He turned back to the big sauropod and asked him, "So will you let me give these to my mom?"
Of course. And then when she eats them, then I'll eat her, and then we're all even. Or maybe you could just let me eat you instead and avoid all that trouble, and then your mom gets to live her life without any worry of any harm from me. How about that?
Or I could just give these to my mom and you can eat me instead. The scorer knew this little creature was dumb, at least that's what he thought. But after speaking with Rogototh for a while, he realized the creature was a little bit more smart than he gave him credit for. This creature had to be a hatchling. How is it so smart for its age? Usually babies of this age don't have the mental faculties to even have a debate, much less form a thought outside of what's in front of their faces and what they can smell and wanting their mom.
All right, Chomp Treader, hurry it up then. But you owe me a debt. I'm going to be standing right here, waiting for you to come back out that burrow, and if you don't come out, I will stomp it to bits.
Rogototh would be lying if he said he wasn't scared, but he wanted to be strong for his mother. Nothing mattered more than taking care of her, and when he went in, he removed the grapes from under his tongue, and they rolled towards his mother's cold body. She wasn't breathing, she wasn't moving at all. It's as though she was frozen. The sauropod, curious as ever, leaned down and lowered his head to the entrance of the burrow so he could see inside. It only required him to take one look at the mother to know that she was no longer with them. He looked back at the little baby. "See, Mom, I got you food. If you eat it, you'll feel better again. Right? You said that you need to eat a lot for you to get warm. So eat up. Don't worry about me. I'll take care of you this time." The male grape scorer cared not for Chomp Treaders. After all, they also fed on his kind. But something inside his heart broke to pieces when he saw the baby trying to talk to his mother, not realizing that she was dead.
Oh boy, your mother's not going to eat those.
Sure she will. She just needs a minute. I promise. The grape scorer sighed. He rolled his eyes and then lifted his mighty neck back up into the sky, thinking for a moment. And then he lowered it back to the entrance of the burrow. He looked to the ground, covered in snow. Looking back up at Rogototh, he sighed.
Kid, why don't you come out here for a second while you wait for your mom to eat that?
Okay, I'll be right back, Mom. He stepped outside and looked up at the sauropod. The grape scorer looked down at him.
There's no easy way to say this, but your mother isn't going to eat. Because she can't anymore. She's gone. She's dead.
Rogototh just looked up at the purple creature. His brain did some very strange things in that moment, like wondering why the creature looked so much like the fruit that he was eating. Wondering why the creature was so tall. Even calculating in his mind that if you took the legs and the neck and the tail off the creature that it would only be half his mother's size.
Are you hearing what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, kid. That's rough. Jeez, I won't eat you, but I don't know what to say.
Rogototh looked back to his mother's face and noticed that her eyes were open and glassed over. They were dry and shiny as though they had been frozen. Rogototh broke down and started crying, not knowing what else to do or where to turn. Who was going to take care of him? How is he going to get food? What was he going to do? Despite not wanting to take responsibility for this thing, the male grape scorer could not help feeling as he did.
Oh boy. Alright, tell you what. For the winter, you could hang out with me. Alright? We gotta get moving, because her body's going to start attracting other predators.
Don't say that.
I'm very sorry. But she must have taught you the reality of life and what would happen if she were to go, if she couldn't feed you anymore. Did she not do that?
It's different, because she said she'd always be there with me. She said she'd always be there, she wouldn't leave. See, she came back. The grape scorer finally had enough, and he raised his whole weight up on his hind legs and then stomped very powerfully down on the ground. It made Rogototh fly back.
All right. I am not going to tell you again. It's either you come with me and you survive, or you stay here and you die with her. That is it. I'm walking now, and if you're going to follow me, you better keep up. If not, you're going to die here with her, and her death would have meant nothing. You ungrateful pissant.
And with that, the male grape scorer started walking away. Rogototh, realizing that he would have been left all alone, looked back at his mother. He tried hugging her, but her body was no longer warm and it was uncomfortable. Knowing that he only had a small window of opportunity before the snow that was falling started obscuring his vision, he started to notice that the male grape scorer was getting farther and farther away, disappearing in the snow. He made the hard choice of leaving his mother's body behind and going after the sauropod creature. "Wait!" he cried out, sinking in the snow. His legs were much too small and he was losing heat too quickly. "Wait, I'm gonna come with you." But the scorer kept going until his whole body could not be seen. And suddenly there was a cloud of snow in front of Rogototh that he could not see through. He could hear the clicking of some strange noises around him. No doubt animals hunting him at this very moment. He curled up in a ball and let the snow cover him. He made the low trilling sound that he always made whenever his mother told him to signal her that he was in danger. Knowing that she would not come back, he still hoped with all his heart that she would. If anything would make his mother come back, it would be him calling out for help. And then he heard the heavy footfalls, and when he heard them, his heart lit up until he was pulled out of the snow by the grape scorer.
Whoa.
The mighty creature put the very cold Rogototh on his back.
Looks like you and me are a team now. Made it.
Rogototh hung his head in defeat. Despite everything that was told and everything he saw, he still expected it to be his mother. The male grape scorer walked off into the snow, with Rogototh on his back, as they walked through the White Ridge, braving the storm and the winter.
Step lively, step lively. We're almost there. Are we really? Because you said that moments ago. Oh, I am very offended. Of all the time you've known me since you were a little pupling, don't you know my great sense of direction? Oh, yeah, I trust that. It's your lying that gets me.
Rogototh is now a lot larger than his mother used to be. He has grown up and is now almost a complete adult. Since he's been with Kaz his whole life, it's normal for him to go on adventures with him. One of Kaz's favorite spots and other grape scorers was called the Ridge Fields. It was these flat fields that just spanned for many miles. And though it was still winter, it was a pretty calm day, really chill and much warmer than it usually is.
Alright, look around, see if you can find some grapes,
said Kaz, looking at Rogototh and immediately sniffing the air as if looking for something in particular. Kaz, with his large sauropod body, then saunters off in an opposite direction from where he said that he would go. Rogototh looked at him. Befuddled, the young adult Chomp Treader stared at his friend.
Kaz, where you going?
Kaz turned his long neck back in the direction of Rogototh, and he raised an eyebrow.
I'm sorry, I'm an adult. Am I not allowed to do what I wish? Yeah, but we had a plan, and you always say not to deviate from the plan. No, that's where I know you're not listening. I mean, you must never deviate from the plan.
Rogototh rolled his yellow eyes before Kaz lifted up his tail slightly as if to shush him.
She's here. I'm sorry, what now? The owner of that delicious, delectable smell. Don't you smell it? It's permeating the entire atmosphere.
Rogototh smelled the air and looked around.
No, I do not.
Kaz turned back to look at him.
Really? With all those nostrils in your face, you can't smell that? Okay, I'm gonna go this way and look for those grapes. Have fun.
And that's exactly what Kaz intended on doing. As he walked further into the field, his feet sank down in the soft snow. It felt great on the bottom of his feet. He is so used to the hard ground, but in the winter, he loved how his feet felt like they were being caressed and hugged every time he took a step. And then he stopped. He looked behind him to see where Rogototh was. He was nowhere to be seen. He looked ahead, and his eyes widened. There was his desire. That was the owner of the smell. And before him, across the white field, was a beautiful sight. It was a female grape scorer. She was releasing a smell that she was not even aware of. Confidently, Kaz stuck out his chest and began walking up to the female. Oh dear. Are you all right?
Yeah. Yes, I am. I am okay. Okay, let's start over.
Kaz lowered his long neck, trying to collect himself, and also cursing himself inwardly for embarrassing himself in front of this female. I'm totally fine with that. He puffed out his chest and raised his neck so high that it stood over Connie, well over about 7 feet.
My name is Kaz. Kazillion.
He smiled a toothy grin. The female just looked at him as though he were crazy. Oh, okay.
Oh, this is the part where you tell me your name.
Oh, right. My name...
Oh, no! What was wrong?
Kaz looked behind him, and who did he see but a large Chomp Treader heading straight for him. At first, his inkling was to run or fight and not knowing which to do. But then, as his eyes focused, having an initial problem doing so because of the glare from the white snow, he recognized it to be Rogo.
Oh, boy, you gave me a damn right scare. What are you thinking? Why are you over here?
Rogototh silently moved through the snow. It was very jarring seeing such a large creature being able to move that quietly. He then looked in the direction of the fleeing female.
I could ask you the same question, Kaz.
Kaz looked back to where the female was running.
Wait! Oh boy.
The female stopped to stare at Kaz and Rogo. She wondered what would happen next. Was this male going to fight this demon? Oh, she had to see this. She didn't like violence, but then again, that male was confident enough not to run. Or maybe he's ill.
It's okay. I know how this looks, but everything is fine.
The female just stared. She then turned to face him, waiting from a distance. Are you going to battle it? Are you sure?
Battle? Well, wait a minute. Oh.
Kaz turned back around slowly, his long neck trailing behind itself as he stared at Rogo with a toothy smile.
No. Oh, you must. You owe me a debt, remember? Ever since you were little, and I took care of you, boy, you owe me this. You can't be serious right now. I'm not doing this. Please. Don't make me beg you. Don't make me tell you.
Rogo smiled and puffed out his chest confidently. He waved his tail to and fro.
You do realize I'm chunkier than you now, right? I'm so proud that you're honest enough to yourself to call yourself chunky and not beefy. Ugh, I'm walking away now. You do this for me, I'll never ask you for anything else again.
Rogo stopped. He turned slightly to his right. He looked at Kaz with his eyes.
Really? Not even the tree thing? What tree thing? Alright, bye.
Rogo kept walking.
Oh, that tree thing. Yes, not even the tree thing. God damn it. Come on. Okay, looks like we have a deal then, Kaz. I'm all for it. Alright, how do you want to do this?
Kaz quickly thought.
Alright, so
suddenly there was a huge snap in his direction, jaws almost clamping down within inches of his face.
What are you doing?
Rogo took in a deep breath and then roared furiously in Kaz's face. It was so believable, Kaz actually did in that moment fear for his life.
Alright, we are pretending though, right?
Oh, good Snow, this score is crazy, said the female. It's okay, just run away, you don't have to prove anything, she called out. Rogo growled again. He then lowered his head and used it to smash into Kaz, who was not expecting this, and went falling down, head over tail, tail over legs. He rolled to a stop, all his weight crashing down on his inner organs.
Ow.
Rogo roared again at him. He started going down the incline, where Kaz fell down, and then he had an idea. He looked up and saw the female standing at a distance. He thought for a moment, looked back down at Kaz. Kaz looked up at him.
Okay, that was a little bit too much. Can you just ease up a little bit? What are you doing? Where are you going? Where are you going?
Rogo, on his four mighty legs, like a T-Rex crocodilian creature, sauntered up to the female and then held its head low to stalk her like a giant cat.
Oh, no.
The female turned tail and ran. She called out for the male to help her, but Kaz had no idea what was going on. This was not part of the plan. Rogo knew a way to make it more believable is if he directly put the female in danger, made her fear for her life, and they made Kaz have to save her. This was perfect. He looked behind him to see if Kaz was following. Kaz was just making his way up the steep incline. When Kaz looked, his eyes widened in horror, realizing what Rogo was about to do.
No.
Come on, old man, Rogo thought to himself. He turned back around to face the female and snapped his jaws. He moved eerily silently over the snow, even though he was galloping at full speed. His wide reptilian claws made it very easy for him to run and cover the surface of the snow, so he caught up to the female in no time and snapped towards her. Kaz looked on in horror as the female screamed bloody murder. He started galloping towards Rogo, but Rogo was already so far ahead of him. He watched as Rogo cut off the female and snapped towards her again, and then tackled her onto the ground.
Okay, Rogo, stop!
Rogo roared at the female, and something strange happened. His eyes became glassy. His teeth felt as though they were at one with the rest of his body. He could feel how they were an extension of him. He could feel his own muscles rippling throughout his mass. His tail beat the snow. The suits on his back started rattling. They made an eerie noise as he stared down at the female. It was a noise that haunted many prey animals, knowing that when they heard it, it meant that a Chomp Treader was already too close for them to get away. A creature that was so large, but had such powerful hind legs that it was capable of covering distances very quickly before the prey had time to process what was happening. It's why he was able to catch up to the female so quickly. These creatures, the Chomp Treaders, were able to tread over any terrain, dirt, desert, snow, and they were at home in the water as well. The female's eyes widened, realizing what was happening. She realized that this would be her last moment, and this would be the last thing she saw before she died. Trying to fight, she rolled over in her stomach and tried to get up again to use her tail to whip in Rogo's direction. Rogo's senses were on high alert, and he knew exactly every move she was going to make before she did it. After all, he spent his time growing up with Kaz. These creatures basically all fought the same. Kaz had also told him about the fighting styles of other grape scorers. Kaz taught him to be defensive, that there were times they were going to have to meet up with other herds of grape scorers just to harvest or to graze. They would not take too kindly to a baby Chomp Treader being so close. So from he was a baby, Rogo learned how to avoid the stomping legs of other scorers, avoid their necks being used as weapons, and most of all, avoiding those tails that could cut through meat like a hot knife through butter. Rogo could hear Kaz calling to him frantically, but something was wrong. It wasn't Kaz's voice. It was the way Rogo felt. He looked down at the female lying on the snow, and this feeling that he has never felt before just made him aroused in a way that he did not recognize. His teeth bared. His eyes became larger. He was taking in more breath, but taking it more steadily. And before he could think about what he was doing, he chomped down on the female's legs, and then he pulled in one direction and tried to rip her leg off. There was a clunking noise as her bone dislocated from her hip. The female wailed. The pain shot throughout her body. At first, she couldn't believe what was happening, but then all she could register was pain and agony. Not even fear, just pain. Kaz was still making his way towards Rogo, but he stopped when he realized what was happening. Was this part of the play? What was Rogo doing? He knew this little Chomp Treader, who was now a large Chomp Treader. He raised him. He raised him practically from birth. And now Kaz was watching as the creature he had raised to be gentle was mauling the female. For the first time since he's known Rogo, Kaz felt fear. Fear of Rogo. He looked as blood started pouring out on the snow.
Stop. Rogo, stop. Rogo, stop!
Kaz noticed that Rogo was not processing anything. He shifted his head, and then shifted his weight. Then he ran towards Rogo and covered this distance. As Kaz bumped into Rogo with all of his weight, Rogo quickly pushed him back off and then roared in his direction and snapped his jaws, narrowly missing Kaz's face. Kaz could tell, just looking into Rogo's eyes, that he was no longer playing along. He was in full predator mode. His prey drive was through the roof. It was so high it was kissing the surface of the moons. Kaz recoiled when he saw the eyes of the creature he had known to love. What was he thinking? Why did he ever think that this creature would just remain a gentle, little sweet thing from when he was small? Kaz had a flash of when Rogototh was a baby, and how sweet and innocent he was. How he always wanted to just take care of his mother and take care of those around him. Now he was a killer, his face covered in blood. Kaz tried again. He roared in his primal state, and then using his long neck, he whipped his head towards Rogo. Kaz closed his sapphire eyes, first using a nictating membrane, and then, utilizing his armored eyelids, his nasal passageways closed up and swelled shut, to receive the impact using his head as a hammer to hit Rogo. As soon as Kaz's head made contact with Rogo's neck, the great bobble organs that were on top of Kaz's face and along the ridge of his head exploded upon impact. Rogo wailed in pain as these things touched his skin and burst out in acid all over him. Rogo whimpered and started leaping away as some of them burned straight through his left foreleg and some of his neck. He rolled instinctively in the snow to try and get rid of the burning, but that just made it worse. While Rogo was writhing painfully in the snow, Kaz kept his eye on him, and he went towards the female and looked down at her. Can you stand? My leg. It's okay. I'm gonna go over to this side. I know it's gonna be painful, but we need to move now. So just put your full weight on me, alright? Use your neck, hook it over mine. I'll lift you the rest of the way. Good thing the female was small enough, probably a young female, that Kaz could mostly use his weight to support her. Rogo, with his prey drive still elevated, got to his feet and shook the snow off of him. The burns and the craters those impacts made this even more real to Kaz. Kaz looked at him with vitriol, but also with sadness and betrayal. The little organs on his face and the back of his head were inflating again. It would take a while till they were back to their full integrity. Rogo roared furiously. He took a step towards Kaz. Kaz went in between the female, who fell back down, and Rogo, and roared again at him and slammed his tail mightily on the snow. Then he swerved it, using the snow collected on the tip of his tail to then be thrown in Rogototh's face. The cold splash of the snow and ice made Rogo think for a minute. It completely reset his brain. His eyes narrowed, and then he looked up and focused and realized that this was Kaz. He knew it was Kaz, but only moments ago he just did not care. The memory and the relationship he had with Kaz was a distant fact in the very far reaches of his mind as whatever just happened to him took over.
Kaz? Stay away from us. Stay away from us. Just stand right there, please.
Rogo was taken aback by this. He looked down at his front feet. He saw the blood dripping between them. Where was that blood coming from? Was he bleeding? Rogo wiped his face.
I'm bleeding. I guess you got me good, right?
Kaz just stared at him forlornly. He said nothing.
That's not your blood, Rogo.
There was dead silence between them. Rogo looked past Kaz at the female, whose back leg was mangled to bits. Her bone was still there, but all the meat that was on that leg was just completely sloughed off.
Oh my god. Oh no, Kaz, I'm so sorry. Just stay right there, okay? Can we talk about this?
Kaz momentarily stared at the female by using his eyes to look at her and then back at Rogo. He didn't trust Rogo and did not want to take his eyes off of the Chomp Treader.
We'll talk about it when I get back, but she needs help right now, so... I can help. What do you want me to do?
Kaz sarcastically grinned.
Nothing. Nothing you're doing right now. Just wait for me. Wait for you, okay? Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, just score some grapes. Of course, I'll do anything for you, Kaz. I hope she'll be okay. Yep. Alright. I'll see you later. Okay.
Rogototh watched as Kaz kept his eye on him the entire time as he lifted back up the female. She didn't look too good. She was bleeding profusely. And even though this was a very sad occurrence, all the while the smell of her blood bathed through the snow and saturating it was doing something to Rogo. Realizing that he was turning again, he shook his head and he turned the other direction and ran away. Soon the winter months left, and once again spring and the summery months entered. It was the time when all the vast array of mythical creatures would come out to play and help to rejuvenate the ecosystem. Some creatures, like the dew makers, collected water from out of the air and then went down into the deep dark canopies, where it felt like a sauna, to bring the dew to the plants there that needed it. In exchange for the dew that this creature would carry on its back and all around its body, these specific plants would open up for him, so he could feed on the sweet nectar from within. Other creatures would use the dewdrops as lenses for their eyes so they could see varying distances. And then there were other more mysterious creatures who would shake off the parasites on their bodies that emitted the smells and the sounds of a distressed, dying animal. And all of this to distract much larger prey who had the habit of stocking up on their meals and always taking an opportunity. The full-grown male Chomp Treader, Rogototh, rolled over on his stomach and sniffed the air. He smelled the decay, with a hint of sweetness to it. He looked around, trying to eye carefully what he knew would be waiting in the wings. The smell was too overpowering. He got up and shook his body, and then walked lazily into the trees. The Doobop wasted no time as he left and went to his place where he lay down. Chomp Treaders shed most of their scales when they were at rest or sleeping, and it was the delicacy of this nifty little creature. As it was stuffing all the scales into its little pouches in its mouth, it heard the thundering footfalls of a creature galloping at full speed towards it, looking up very briefly to see a set of jaws before they clamped down around its body. Rogototh was pleased with himself. That's the 7th time that creature has come around. They're so annoying, but finally, he has the creature. Very tiny creature, only the size of his eye. But what an explosion of flavor. This specific creature released a chemical whenever it was swallowed. It was a thick, gooey substance that was sickly, bitter, and smelt like decay. It was a defense mechanism to hopefully get whatever swallowed it to spit it out before it chomped down. Unluckily for little creature, Rogototh happened to love that specific amalgamation of smells and tastes. What a delicacy it was. He yawned and lay back down and took a nap. When Rogo woke up, he really wanted an adventure. There was something nice about being on his own and not being accountable to anyone. Surely he had missed Kaz for many months after they split up. He knew that it was because of what he did that caused their relationship to be hurt, and he couldn't understand why he should have felt bad about it. Kaz, of course, was not his mother, and he couldn't help feeling that if his mother had still been alive, she could have explained all these things to him. As Rogo walked into the upside meadow, he lay down in the grass and rolled around on his back, scratching an itch. The grass was mesmerizingly itchy, in a good way. It was scratchy, in a way that would make most animals feel uncomfortable, but was just perfect for Rogo. As he lay there looking up at the sky, he heard a giggling noise, then a buzzing.
Oh, it's you again. Why do you have to always pester me? Well, hello to you too, Rogototh. You know, this is my patch, and you know it is. I love harvesting from here, but this is where you always lay and put your stink all over it. Your name's not on it, bro. Actually, you're incorrect. Scutterflues always leave their distinct, dusty smell, and if your smell is there, no one is allowed to take the spot. So, my name, for all intents and purposes, is on it.
Rogototh rolled over while also rolling his eyes and lay on his stomach in a loaf position, much like a cat would when they stuff all their legs under their body.
Okay, well, I'm not a scutterflu, so the laws don't apply to me here. Plus, I'm much larger than you. Tell me, Himlo.
He lowered his massive head. The scutterflu had to struggle to keep on a blade of grass to combat the resistance of the air that Rogototh was breathing out.
Why should I listen to a creature smaller than my fingernail? Because, since your memory is so short, this creature knows how to spot things that you can't see. So when the wind is whiplashing all about and you don't know where the smell's coming from for your next meal, don't come crying to me.
Himlo beats his little wings in the air, and Rogototh uses his fingernail to preclude the scutterflu from going higher.
Please stop that! Do you know how delicate my wings are? Look, I'm sorry. Alright, you're right. I just wanted to enjoy the day. We don't get a lot of days like this, even in the springtime. Ah, yes, the winters are getting longer. I've noticed that. Everyone's been moving about. As one of the largest scutterflu you've ever known, the only scutterflu I've ever known, yes, well, and the largest, I happen to know that the winters are going to be complete for the entire year. No spring. All around, just snow, ice, and cold, and it will be like that for about a century. You and your stories.
Rogototh rolled back over on his back and tried to take a nap. Himlo, the scutterflu, landed on his belly.
No, I happen to know this from a great source, because you see, us scutterflu don't just come from this entire sphere, Celestial. We come from many. It's beautiful. It's what makes us so unique. We can survive in the vacuum of space, and so we can travel far and wide. And I've seen cycles like this before. Have you now? Oh yes, my friend Rogo, I have. and I can tell you for all certainty, you're going to have to start learning how to get used to the snow and the ice and the cold. That's going to be your planet very soon. So winter's gonna last forever? For you, yes, it's very possible for the rest of your exact lifetime that you may never see the spring again.
Just then, Rogo heard another giggling sound. It sounded like actual laughter. Snapping his jaws shut in fury, he leapt up onto his feet after rolling over and whipped his tail in the direction of whatever it was, and then he recoiled, softening his expression.
Oh, sorry.
"Oh, that's okay," said a female Chomp Treader. She was with her sister.
You just whip your tail at us. I did, and for that I apologize. You took me by surprise.
Took you by surprise? What's so surprising about us being here?
I think it's safe to say you've rather offended them,
Himlo said on his shoulder.
Yep, thanks for pointing out the obvious. So I can move and you guys can stay here if you'd like. I best be getting on my way anyway.
That's right. You best be on your way. If I ever see you around here again, Itchy, please. It's all right. Well, don't come crying to me if he hurts and breaks your heart again.
Don't worry, I won't.
With that, the gruffy female walks off, leaving this one smiling shyly at Rogototh. I'm really sorry about my sister. She's a little bit overkill. Very protective of me.
That's all right. I can go if you'd like.
Actually, I wanted to come over here to say hello. You always look like you're having so much fun, and it's not been so fun as of late. Most of the Chomp Treaders left. My name's Latchbreaker. The female bobbed her head up and down and revealed the underside of her jaw, which was very peculiar to Rogototh.
What are you doing?
What? What do you mean? I'm saying hello. Do you not know that?
Oh, no. I mean, I just say hello, usually. Just hello.
It's so weird. Tell me about yourself. Like, where'd you come from? I know you're not from around here originally. Did you recently move in?
I've been here for a while. I've just been keeping a low profile. It's been finally nice enough to get out, so I figured why not.
I think she's chosen you as a suitable mate. Shut up. You sorry?
No, not you. It's the Scutterflu that I made friends with.
Latchbreaker laughs. Her laugh is so beautiful that it caught Rogototh off guard. You make friends with Scutterflus? It's so weird.
Why is everything I do weird to you?
Rogototh scoffs and then walks away. Latchbreaker immediately stops laughing. Oh, please, I'm really sorry. I wasn't trying to offend you. I just was making light of it. I didn't think you were weird in, like, a bad way. It's just you're different, and it's refreshing. You're not like any other Chomp Treader that I've met. Like, you're just so different. In a good way.
Respond? Thank you.
There's silence between them for a while. It's very awkward, and very clear to Latchbreaker that Rogototh probably has not any experience with females. It makes her more intrigued about him. She looks behind her in the distance where her sister is watching her. She nods to her sister, and her sister walks farther away.
I think your sister's leaving you. You better catch up.
I can always see her later on some of the time. I'm more interested in you. I think we should be friends. Rogototh's heart fluttered. He doesn't know why. He looks at the female. She bats her eyes at him. Rogototh shakes his head. His body gets warm. He gets rigid, and scoots on his back, starts standing erect.
I don't do the whole friend thing. Didn't work out very well for me.
Latchbreaker skips in front of him and walks alongside him. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. What do you mean by that? Like, it's obvious that we don't have the same upbringing. You don't act like a normal Chomp Treader. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing.
If it's not a bad thing, why do you keep bringing it up like it is?
Be gentle.
Shut up.
Latchbreaker looks at the Scutterflu, now hiding behind the eye ridges of this male that she is very interested in. Normally, if males had talked to her that way, she would have a massive problem with it. But she really likes Rogototh. He's so mysterious and so confident in who he is. Yet, he's not with any females. Let's start over. My name is Latchbreaker. I grew up in the dusty plains, but my mother and my father, they were travelers, and they were more the aqua breed.
My mom was of the aqua breed too. For all you know, we might have the same fathers.
That is very possible. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up just on the edge of White Ridge.
In the valley? Asked Latchbreaker, genuinely intrigued.
Yep.
So your mother, where is she? I gather that she's still young enough that she is probably still living there, and you go to visit her, right?
Oh no, she's dead. She died when I was a baby. Not long. After I hatched. Like 2 weeks after I hatched.
Latchbreaker stopped and looked sadly at Rogototh. I'm so sorry. Who raised you? This next part of the story would answer most of Latchbreaker's questions. Rogototh had never told the story to anyone. He told some of it to Hilmo, but this is the first time he's actually told someone of his species.
Kaz. He was really cool.
Kaz? What kind of name is that?
He was a wanderer. We had many adventures together. We used to score grapes. That was really fun.
Rogototh said as he kept walking. Latchbreaker stopped for a moment and then continued walking alongside him, the both of them going down a steep incline and almost sliding down into the meadow field where there was nothing but flat grassland. Flowers opened up all around them, and different creatures were bounding to and fro and up and down throughout the grass.
So wait a minute,
Was it your relative?
Not by blood.
And he used to score grapes with you? It's so weird. I'm sorry I'm using the word weird. It's just, this is all new for me. Just hearing something different other than what I usually, I'm used to growing up.
Well, what happens to the orphans in your family?
They usually just join a very young hunting party and they learn how to hone in their skills. That never includes scoring grapes. I've never heard of a Chomp Treader scoring grapes, like a grape scorer.
Well, I guess I did that because that's what Kaz was. He was a grape scorer.
Latchbreaker quickly stopped in front of him.
What?
Rogo stopped too and looked at her.
He was a grape scorer. Kaz.
So, wait a minute. You were raised by a grape scorer. Am I correct?
Yep. Good to know your hearing works.
Wow. That is bizarre. How did he... What? Why? I don't understand. How did you... Rogototh took a huge breath. He was a little bit impatient with his female, but something about being able to tell the story and someone legitimately being interested made him feel at ease. And so he told her the whole story of when he was a child, how he met Kaz, and then what happened, and why they're no longer friends. He held his head down in shame.
I've never, really told the whole story to anyone before because, I just wanted to start my life over, start clean, and I know I'm a monster. I'm sorry. Now you know that about me.
Have you never met any other Chomp Treaders before, like after your mom?
They were dangerous, so if I saw them at a distance, Kaz would protect me because he said they would kill me.
Oh my. Oh no.
What?
Latchbreaker looked at him with tears in her eyes. Rogo, I'm so sorry that you went through all of that. But your friend was not your friend. He was being really selfish when he raised you. You should have been raised with your own kind. Kaz, I hate to break it to you, but what you did that day, there's no reason for any shame. Whatsoever. Do you know why?
Because I didn't kill Kaz?
No, Rogo. It's because you're supposed to kill Kaz. Rogo was caught off guard and very confused.
What are you talking about? Are you crazy or something?
Let me show you something. Come with me. Latchbreaker took off running at a speed that Rogototh didn't even realize was capable for her. He ran after her and actually had a hard time keeping up. When Rogo finally caught up to Latchbreaker, she told him to look down. In the valley between some of the rolling hills in this meadow, there was a herd of grape scorers. A lead male, much larger than even Kaz, was walking among his females. A young baby was in tow. Latch nodded her head in a direction. Rogo followed her gaze and saw something suspicious. A large male Chomp Treader, along with two females that were hunting behind him, were stalking the herd. Immediately, chaos broke out as the Chomp Treaders ambushed the herd. The great scorer let out a trumpeting cry, and the baby went in between his legs. The large male Chomp Treader kept snapping its jaws at the sauropod's legs. The baby was instructed not to go anywhere, but it was very clear that she was terrified. Finally, the male Chomp Treader watched on as one of the females came up behind and bit some of the muscle meat out of the male sauropod grape scorer. After howling in pain and falling over, the adult Chomp Treaders wasted no time in ripping his neck to shreds. With the baby exposed, a female and male baby Chomp Treader came out from the bushes and attacked the baby, hunting alongside the adults. Latchbreaker looked over at her new friend Rogototh. You see? This is completely normal. This is what Chomp Treaders do. Kaz made you feel like that because your kind, our kind, are the direct predators of his. With that, Latch chomped her jaws and snapped them tightly and ran down to meet the other Chomp Treaders. She took something up in her mouth and came back and ran towards Rogototh.
Like the character she is, don't you think?
Here, go ahead. You'll see. The baby grape scorer, who had been trying to hide behind her father, dropped out of Latchbreaker's mouth, only scratched up faintly due to the sharp edges of Latchbreaker's teeth. It's okay, Rogototh. This is what you were designed to do. This is what you're supposed to be eating. And you don't have to feel ashamed about doing it. Rogototh looked down at the baby grape scorer. His teeth bared. He shivered, and then arousal came up again.
I can't.
Yes, you can. Latchbreaker shifted her weight again, looked down at the baby scorer, and then slammed her jaws around it, just hard enough to break its back. Blood spilled from out of the baby scorer as it bawled. It cried incessantly, moving its front legs and trying to drag itself. The pain was unbearable. Latchbreaker could see in Rogototh's eyes that he could smell the blood and that he wanted to finish it off. It's a mercy. Killing it. It's suffering. Do it! Unable to control himself anymore, Rogototh finally threw all of his reservation away and slammed his jaws down over the baby scorer. Just then, they both heard footsteps. Large, titanic footsteps. When Rogototh looked up to see what animal was making those footfalls, his heart dropped. The blood seeped out of his mouth as he swallowed a chunk of flesh and spat out the rest, the head of the baby scorer, and it rolled downward towards the feet of a male grape scorer, of Kaz, his old friend who had raised him from he was a child. Kaz looked down at the head and then looked up slowly at Rogototh.
Kaz, I should have killed you that day.
Kaz, what's happening? Said the female scorer behind him. The same female scorer that Rogototh had attacked.
Connie, get back.
Connie obeyed Kaz, and that's when Rogototh noticed that the sauropod only had 3 legs. The leg he had chewed off, while the rest of it had fallen off somehow, and healed. She used the midsection of her tail to keep herself balanced most of the time as she walked. Before Rogototh could think anything further, he was attacked. Kaz charged into him, ripping into his neck with his grated flat teeth.
Please, I don't want to fight you. Then don't. It's the least you could do for what you've done.
Kaz raised up on his hind legs and used his mighty forelegs to push Rogototh in the chest. The blow sent Rogototh rolling past Latchbreaker. Latchbreaker looked back up at the male scorer and hissed.
Latchbreaker, don't! Don't!
What are you doing? He needs to die. You can't just let—
Please, don't.
Latchbreaker hissed and stepped back. Kaz watched her warily, and then he refocused on Rogototh.
Kaz?
Rogototh said, measuredly, as they circled one another.
I really didn't mean what happened that day. I didn't mean for that to happen. Of course you didn't, Rogototh. You're a cold, mindless killing machine. I should have known. But I never hurt you. You just killed my baby niece. Everything you do, everything you touch, it dies.
Kaz used his head as he did in the past to try and hit Rogototh. The bubbly, bursting organs exploded on impact as they did in the past. Rogototh screamed in pain. He had a chance to clamp his jaws down around Kaz's neck, but chose not to.
You made me think that something was wrong with me my whole life, and I waited for you, you know. After you said you were going to come back, I waited for you.
Kaz tackled Rogototh, sending him off balance and momentarily falling onto his back. Rogototh quickly got back up and dodged another one of Kaz's great sauropod attacks.
What makes you think that I would come back for a demon like you? Kaz, we were friends. I was a fool to ever think we could ever be friends. You're my enemy. It's what is. It's what will always be. And now look what you've done. I'm so sorry. Then if you're really sorry, let me kill you. It's the least you could do for sending your friends to kill my brother. And for eating my niece.
Kaz said through clenched teeth. Rogototh's eyes widened. Spittle flew out of the sauropod's mouth, and Kaz charged straight into Rogototh with all his full weight. The both of them went rolling across the grass. Kaz's bubble organs were not at full integrity, but he used his massive, armored head to beat Rogototh senseless. Rogototh had no idea. I mean, he's been hit by those organs before when they exploded, but actually getting hit with Kaz's head was a whole other ordeal. No matter how many times Rogototh tried to calm down Kaz, he was just inconsolable. Kaz had Rogototh on the ground and prepared to stomp him in the face. Rogototh's eyes had been closed. He was momentarily blinded by the pummeling he had taken, and before he could register what was happening, as soon as he opened his eyes and saw the mighty legs of the male grape scorer that had taken care of him ready to come down and smush his eyes and crush his head, time seemed to stop. Kaz stopped and made a gurgling noise. Connie screamed bloody murder and ran away. Rogototh was confused until he looked over and saw that Kaz's neck was furled all the way behind him, and what had his head in a vice was the jaws of Latchbreaker. She slammed her jaws shut tighter, and there was a crunching noise. Latchbreaker quickly spat out his head. Kaz unmightily fell to the floor in a heap as Rogototh watched what used to be his friend crumple before him lifelessly. Rogototh got up and shook his head. He was wobbly for a while, but then he got steady as his brain stopped singing. He looked over at Latchbreaker and then at Kaz. His predatory instincts were still there, but they moved aside to give way for something else. Empathy. Laz crept closer to Kaz's body. He nuzzled his body and lay beside it, with his head resting on top of the dead sauropod's body. Rogo, he was gonna kill you.
Just wait over there, please.
Okay. Latchbreaker tristfully replied as she retreated from him.
Oh, Rogototh, you do know she did not mean to make you unhappy. She did in fact save your life. I don't need you to talk right now. Yes, I understand. You're confused about the way that you're feeling. Why you would even feel disquieted with the death of such a creature. Well, quite simply put, he raised you. Taught you what you know. He taught me nothing.
Rogototh responded with ire. He was so loud his roar echoed through the valleys.
He made me ill-prepared. He took me from my mother, and he made me pray. Dear boy, nobody could ever make you pray. And despite all his best efforts, you still almost skewered his wife. Now I'm sitting here and I know I'm supposed to be sad, but the reason I feel depressed right now is because I actually feel nothing, and I know I should. That's quite understandable,
replied the Scutterflew, who was looking at the dead body. Hilmo flew down and softly landed on one of the eyes of the male grape scorer who used to be Kaz. He utilized his legs and scraped some of the dusty substances off of his body, and it coated the eye of Kaz. Kaz's eyes became darkened, like a dark film was over them, covered by the dust of the Scutterflew.
Now he can rest peacefully, and you can move on with your life. And look at what your life has given you, where he's brought you.
Rogo looked in the direction of Latchbreaker. Her back was to him, but she was waiting faithfully there, probably feeling guilty as well. Rogo narrowed his eyes and then walked farther away from her.
Where are you going?
Hilmo said as he looked back in the direction of Latchbreaker. He fluttered in front of Rogo's face.
Stop. Rogo, stop. Get out of my way, Hilmo. Why are you running from something so wonderful? You've been running your entire life. Well, you know what I mean. After Raz and his situation. He's dead now. There's no need for you to feel any shame. She answered that for you. Yes, I understand. Now get away from me. Last thing I want to do is be tied down to some female. Tied down? Do you know how hard it is for my kind to find a female? It is so difficult that one of us, every leap year, has to turn into one for there to be one. You should count yourself lucky that she's throwing herself at you, because you're quite ugly, if I might say so myself.
Rogototh slammed his jaws in the direction of the Scutterflu, who quickly moved out of the way.
Please leave me alone. I do best alone. Your kind isn't meant to be alone. Don't you understand that? Instead of just a scavenger waiting for Scutterflu to help you find your food.
Rogo whirled around on the Scutterflu. It took him a while to find even where Hilmo was, since he was so small.
I'm warning you. Fly away right now.
Hilmo landed on a tall blade of grass, very close to where Rogo was.
Rogo, if I fly away now, I'll not be returning.
Rogo stopped walking and looked in the direction where he could smell the Scutterflu.
Look, I'm just not in the mood right now, okay? You know I don't mean that. Well, I do. I think you're using me as a crutch. You could be so much better. Your line could be so much better, and you're never going to find out how to help your species survive if I keep coddling you. Coddling? Hilmo, you're being a little bit overdramatic. Dearest friend, I don't need you. You need me. Okay, fine, I need you, alright? Can we drop it? Can you just relax? That female over there, she is good for you. Objectively. And so, our arrangement is officially at an end. Okay, I know you're joking, so I'll see you tomorrow.
Hilmo took off in the air and hovered in front of Rogo.
I wish you the best of luck, my friend. I want you to remember this. The winters are going to be very, very long very soon. Soon, spring will be an alien concept for this planet. So why are you telling me this? Because you survived the last bad one. With a prey animal. And I've noticed that over 71% of your species has gone extinct. But you, Latchbreaker, and the other treaders out here, they're still kicking. You're also a mixed breed. So it would behoove you to mate with the females in this area to make your breed have a chance at lasting through these winters. Alright, whatever you say. As your friend, go back. Go and talk to her. Goodbye.
And at that, Rogototh watched as a Scutterflu that he had known for a while now flew into the air and disappeared. Rogo would not take him seriously. But the next day, when he would try to look for him, he would realize that Hilmo was gone. He was telling the truth. He fully intended to leave. And it was so fitting. Rogototh had been friends with Kaz, and it always shocked him how eerily easy it was to just disconnect from the relationship that he had, even on that day. And that's the same thing the Scutterflu did to him. The next day when he was walking through the meadow, Rogototh did look for the Scutterflu. Hilmo was officially gone. He watched as other Scutterflu took off into the air and disappeared above the clouds, going somewhere, seemingly straight to the stars. He looked up and then stretched his 4 long legs. Crouching back down, he then sucked from the river. He closed his eyes, taking in each cool, refreshing sip, until he smelled something sweet and annoying. So you just left me? I was waiting for you. I realized it took a while, and I was trying to give you space, and then I look up and you're gone. Do you do that all the time? Rogototh rolled his eyes and then closed them slowly, trying to maintain his patience. He raised his head, the water dripping from out of his jaws in massive splashes. I didn't ask you to help me, Latchbreaker. Alright, you have your family, I have no one. Yes, that's right, and I like it that way. Wait, about yesterday, I imagine I know, despite what I said, how hard that was for you, and I wasn't trying to cause you more pain.
I didn't want that at all. I didn't know that he'd be there. I had no way of knowing. Of course you didn't. I don't blame you for that at all.
Rogototh stood to his full height and started to walk away. Latchbreaker felt something inside of her die. She doesn't know why, but she felt connected to this male. She didn't want him to leave, and she walked and then galloped in front of him, stopping right in front of him, where her face was level with his. She looked into his eyes. Rogo, I don't know why, but I really have feelings for you.
Maybe it's because I'm weird.
No, it's because... Well, yes, it's because you're weird, but I like you. I see a strength in you that you don't even see in yourself. I want to be more than friends.
Latchbreaker, I can't take care of you. Most females and most species that I know of expect the male to take care of them. I'm not in that place to take care of you, or take care of myself for that matter. I'm a scavenger, I'm not a hunter.
As Rogo is walking away, Latchbreaker walks in front of him once more. And gently, she nuzzles him and rubs her neck around his neck. An erogenic and thrilling feeling coursed through Rogo's body. Suddenly, in that moment, he was very aware of him being a male and her being a female. Every touch she gave him sent fire shooting through his nerves. I never said that I need you to take care of me. I want to take care of you. Rogo's eyes widened. Something strange grew inside of him. And then on the outside, Latchbreaker smiled seductively and nuzzled him again. And this time, Rogo was unable to help himself. All at once without knowing what was happening, Rogo and Latch were rolling in the grass together. Her tail curled around his. His eyes rolled around in his head, and then straight towards the back, as a deepening primal sensation coursed through his veins. He slammed his jaws shut. He quivered and quaked, and emitted a low rumble. He could feel with every motion Latchbreaker just receiving him and tightening around him. Every time he opened his eyes and looked at a part of her body that he'd never seen before or processed, it filled him with even more eagerness, until all there was light and explosions and a million smells that he's never sensed before, and the life force leaving his body with seemingly each heartbeat, each powerful heartbeat pumping through every part of his body, and then concentrating to the center of his mass. As some flowers bloomed, some of their petals started falling. The air was a little bit more chill than Rogototh was used to. Rogototh walked elegantly towards the burrow. This time, going home brought him such great joy. He lowered his head and skulked inside one of the largest trees that grew in the forest. Latchbreaker looked out at him and smiled. Hey, just in time. Hurry. Looking out from inside their burrow, she watched as her mate's head lowered to look in at them, blocking the light momentarily. He squished his body in, closing up the entire entrance, and then looked down at their eggs. Aren't they beautiful? She asked him. He smiled at her. They both cooed and nuzzled each other.
Yeah, we should count ourselves lucky. We only lost one.
I know, and they're hatching at the same time. Both the proud Chomp Treader parents watched as both the eggs hatched at exactly the same time. Two beautiful babies burst forward and looked up at their parents, cooing and trilling. Rogoth doesn't remember a prouder moment in his entire life. A week passed by, and the babies were already as big as their parents' feet. Kelly was sweet but fierce, and she loved hunting. She really looked up to her father and aspired to be just like him when she grew up. Their boy, Rogan, was pensive and reflective. He didn't just observe the world around him and the actions of others. He absorbed it and learned as much as he could. Rogoth and Latchbreaker were so proud of their very newborn children. They watched them play. I've seen so many babies, but I never thought I'd have my own, much less with you.
Yeah, the big old weirdo, right?
That's right, my weirdo. Latchbreaker bat her eyes and then whipped him playfully with her tail.
You better watch it.
Oh no, you're gonna get angry. It'd be a shame if you got angry at me. I wonder if you ever got angry, whatever would I do? Rogoth took the bait. He opened up his jaws as wide as they could go, and then he used his massive forked tongue to tickle Latchbreaker all over her neck. She rolled in the grass and the flowers. She laughed uproariously, her legs kicking up in the air, and her tail trying to keep him at bay. Suddenly she stopped, looking up fixated on the sky.
What's wrong? Did you pass out? What's wrong?
I don't know. As they both focused on what they were seeing, they realized that what they were looking at was a horde of scutterflues. They were flying, but this wasn't just a normal flight. All over, from as far as the eye could see, Latchbreaker and Rogo realized that these scutterflu were leaving the planet. They flew straight up into the air and became one with the sky.
They're leaving for good.
It's so strange. Latchbreaker turned to look at her mate. Is this what Hilmo told you was going to happen?
Something like that.
Rogo looked towards the kids.
Kelly, Rogan, come over here.
We weren't even playing for that long.
I know, but a storm's coming in. Let's go.
What about me, Daddy? Can I stay and play? Kelly, you heard your father. Let's go. Aw, fine. As they reached the inside of their den, Rogo noticed a strange growth on the inside of their little burrow. It was a fungus called Winter's Kiss, and they always grew right before winter was in full force or before a very large ice storm. It's as though they could sense that it was coming, and the more of them that grew is the more sure that winter would be fierce. Rogo eyed it strangely with trepidation.
You're not supposed to be here,
he said, knowing that they were still only in the beginning stages of spring. Daddy, do you hear that? Everyone stopped what they were doing and listened. They all turned their heads towards the outside of the burrow. Surely enough, something was calling, making a very distressing and annoying sound. Sounds like prey.
baby squirrel.
Most likely. We could use the supper.
No, I'll go take care of it.
Alright, don't be long. It's getting kind of cold out there. Like, really early. Yeah, like, is it supposed to be this cold? Not really in the spring, but sometimes flukes happen. It's just the way life is. Likes the surprises, you know? Well, I don't like surprises. Rogoth left the burrow and followed the noise. Parting some of the ferns, he closed in on it. The moment he stepped closer, knowing that whatever it was just on the other side of this bush, it stopped crying. He carefully moved his massive jaws to part the bush and looked in. He was right. It was a baby grape scorer. A very tiny one.
Well. Is that you making up all that noise out here? You know, that's a bad idea. You're lucky it's me that found you. If it had been my mate or any other creature, you'd be dead by now. Where are your parents?
He looked around, and there was not a scorer in sight. He looked back down at the little baby sauropod. As the creature looked back up at him, something made him shiver. Rogo looked into the eyes of the baby. It reminded him of something, a memory so long ago.
You know, you remind me of someone that I used to know very well. And, he saved my life. So, I'm gonna do you a favor. Come on.
The little baby squirrel shied away and went nowhere. It just kept looking up at Rogo as though he were a monster.
Well, I guess to you I am a monster. Alright. Let's try this. Fat chance of this working, but why not, right?
He leaned down and opened his jaws. The little creature stared into his maw and looked back up at him. As Rogo was walking, he heard a crashing through the trees and a trumpeting noise, and then he was charged. He quickly leapt out of the way. Latchbreaker had heard all the commotion, and she hissed at the creature at the attacker. Standing beside her mate, she whipped her tail furiously and snapped her jaws intimidatingly. She narrowed her eyes and hissed at the aggressor. Rogo went in front of her, in between both her and the creature that attacked them. Rogo looked back at the creature. The baby was nowhere in sight. And when this aggressive creature looked at his jaws and saw the liquid leaking from it, she lost it.
Wait, Connie, please! Please. What have you done? Why can't I be rid of you?
Connie, Rogo, don't reason with them, just kill them! But Rogo watched tensely as the rest of Connie's herd backed her up and walked very cautiously through the vegetation and stood alongside her. An older youngster came forward and stared into the eyes of Rogo with no fear. Rogo walked towards Connie.
I know you and I don't have the best impressions, or at least you don't have the best impressions of me. But I'm not unreasonable.
Of course not. That would imply that you have reason. You're just a thing that takes life. Kaz raised you like his own,
and you allowed him to be slain. I get taking my leg, but there is no excuse for you to turn on him the way you did. I never turned on Kaz. Ever. Right. Tell that to him. Oh, wait. He's no longer with us, is he? Yes, he is, Connie. More than you know.
Rogo lowered his head. Latchbreaker was so confused why her mate was acting this way. She sighed and snapped her jaws, and walked momentarily away from him before turning back and sitting down waiting to see how this would unfold. If it were up to her, she would slaughter every single one of them. As Rogo lowered his body, Connie prepared herself to kick him in the face and to order the whole herd to attack. But as he opened his formidable jaws, his tongue moved to the side and something slid out onto its 4 legs. Connie gasped in relief and shock. It was her baby, her son. She looked back up at Rogo, and then looked back at her baby, who was now waddling towards her.
I found him separated from everyone, so I figured I'd bring him back. He looks just like him. When I heard you crashing through the trees, I figured it must be his. Right?
Connie pursed her lips. She narrowed her eyes, not knowing what to say or how to act in the situation. All she knew is that she hated Rogototh with everything inside of her being. But he didn't eat her baby.
For what it's worth, I'm glad I'm the one that found him.
Reluctantly and with great displeasure and much strain, Connie lifted her head high. Thank you. She turned around and let out a noise for her baby to follow.
You're welcome, Connie.
Connie momentarily stopped. Her long neck swiveled ever so slightly to face Rogototh. She looked into his eyes as he returned her gaze, and then she walked off with her herd.
That was pretty stupid. Why would you do that? Because we have children of our own.
Exactly, they could have used the meat.
And bring the wrath of the entire herd down on our burrow?
That's not smart. We could have fought them. I know that Kaz saved your life.
Yes, Latch, he did,
Rogototh said, whirling around on his mate and staring at her. This time he had tears in his eyes. Somehow seeing the helpless offspring of Kaz awoken something in him, and being a father probably helped bring it back to life. Uncover that part of Rogo who he always doubted that he had. But he did actually care for Kaz. As the Scutterflew had told Rogo, it would get colder. There would only be about 2 months of spring, the shortest ever that Rogo and many of the Chomp Treaders and other animals have experienced. This was not a normal occurrence. It wasn't a fluke. It wasn't just one day. The cold kept creeping in, and it stayed cold. The entire lake and rivers froze over, which was a rarity. But luckily for Rogototh and his family, Rogo had heeded the warnings the Scutterflew had given him a long time ago. He and his family had been traveling for many, many months now. Dad, I'm really cold. Can we stop and burrow? Latchbreaker looked at her mate for approval. Rogan straggled behind them.
Yeah, I second that. I'm really tired too, and I can't feel my feet. No stopping right now, children. At this point, we're literally trying to outrun the storm. There's a super large cell that's coming, and when it does, there'll be no way we can get away from it.
Their children sighed.
But then, if,
Rogan slipped on the ice and then caught himself.
If you say that there's no way to outrun the cold, when we do get there, what's it gonna matter anyway? Where we're going is said to be a little warmer than everywhere else, but even still, if we have more time, we'll be able to dig a burrow so deep that we can escape it.
We just have to make it there. It's all just keep putting one foot in front of the other. We're gonna get there together. When we finally do, then you can ask all the questions your heart's content. Rogan rolled his eyes. He was tired of this moving. His legs were so sore. He knew he would make it there. His parents would lead them to victory. This one thing that he trusted more than his own existence was that of his parents' word. Unfortunately, he would never see that day. He would die before they made the end of the trip, succumbing to respiratory failure due to the cold. When Rogototh and his family finally reached the area known as the Dun Rocks, a region where the planet bled through the landscape, he guided them to the pockets and instructed them to dig deep. It's where the soil was the softest and most rich. For months, they dug as the surface became colder. Other creatures watched the strange action, seemingly completely unaware of the coming annihilation. These creatures, watching Rogototh and his family, would become frozen in time like this. As the air got even colder, Rogototh's eyes widened as he saw Connie and her herd arrive at the area. They all settled and started singing in their relieving song. They were also unaware of what was coming. They had no idea that if they remained on the surface, that would be the end of their life. Sadness filled Rogo as he looked into Connie's elated eyes. She was cheering and hugging all her family members, overjoyed that they finally reached their destination. They were cheering and lifting their little ones into the air and playing with them. Rogototh walked out onto the surface and looked forlornly at Connie, wanting so badly to tell her to come with them, but knowing it would not be feasible. Connie was not a Chomp Treader. Chomp Treaders could brave any terrain. They could climb, they could swim, they could burrow. They were made for it. Their kind had evolved into what they were because they had survived multiple extinction events. Latchbreaker crawled out beside Rogototh on the surface and looked at him, and then followed his gaze.
You can't save them. I know.
Come, Kelly's waiting on us.
I'll be there in a moment.
Rogototh sadly got out and started making the preparations to seal in the entrance. He was so busy he didn't notice that someone was standing behind him. He whirled around and jumped.
Oh. Hi.
I remember you. You saved my life.
Oh, it's nothing. You should probably get back to your mom.
No, it's okay. I told her I was going to come over here and say hi to you anyway. Actually, I didn't give her much of a choice.
You got pretty big.
Yeah, I'm like half your size now.
I don't know about that.
Rogototh then looked back into the hole where his family was waiting. He could hear his mate's calls, impatiently wondering where he was.
It's nice seeing you again. I have to go.
What you doing anyway? Digging a hole?
Yeah, I gotta go.
What you digging a hole for? Rogo became annoyed. What should he do? He wanted to snap at this kid, but for some reason, because he knew that Connie and her whole herd was gonna die, along with most things on the surface, he didn't want his last memory to be something driving fear into something else. There'd be enough time for that. Well, you gonna answer or what? He stared at his late friend's offspring. The kid was ugly, clearly in the growing stage, but looking into his eyes, it was so filled with promise. He had his whole life ahead of him. Kazoo, hurry up! I think that's enough! Don't harass him! Rogo looked over at Connie. She gave him a look and then a nod. That was the only amount of kindness she was willing to display. But then something changed. Between their look, Connie tensed. Rogo? Just kick him away from you if he doesn't move. But Rogo said nothing. Aw, you guys are friends now. Rogo looked down at Kazoo. What's the matter? He then looked up at Connie. Kaz had saved his life. Surely, Rogo would have definitely died that day, and he already saved his little pipsqueak offspring. But he felt like he owed him, knowing that the cold snap was coming and looking into the horizon and seeing the large cell imposingly creeping towards them. Rogo made a crazy decision.
Kaz, I'm gonna need you to get in the hole with me.
The hole? Where does it lead? What is it? I asked my mom.
I'm sorry, there's no time.
And with that, he grabbed Kazoo by his neck. Connie had been staring in fear, knowing that look that Rogo had. It was the same look he had that day. She watched in horror and then in outrage as this thing grabbed her baby and quickly dragged it down the hole that he'd been digging. Connie screamed out and kept screaming no over and over again as she ran towards the hole. Kazoo screamed, regretting his decision to come over here and befriend this thing. His mother tried to tell him. His mother tried to warn him about emotional ties with these kinds of creatures. They would turn on you in an instant, and that's exactly what happened. This creature's mate killed his father. Kazoo had no idea why he thought this would be any different. Let me go, please, let me go! I promise I'll never bother you again! Rogo tightened his grip around the kid, now suffocating him, and he ran all the way to the bottom, a seemingly never-ending tunnel that went as deep into the earth as the water reservoir sank. Latchbreaker was still digging when she saw Rogototh with this thing in his mouth. Oh, you did bring supper. All right. Kelly, your dad bought us something to eat. Great, because I'm starving.
Do not touch him.
Excuse me?
I
Latchbreaker tilted her head in outrage to her mate, and then she looked at Kazoo, who was shaking his head, trying to regain his consciousness. Please.
No, you did not.
Latch,
please. I will only allow this if the only reason you brought him down here is so we can eat.
What's going on?
Please, are these your parents? Please don't let them eat me.
Eat you?
That's what he's for. Don't you understand what's happening? How could you do something like this? You're not thinking, and you make this decision without even asking me? I don't expect you to understand, but I do expect you to comply.
Rogototh, we are not your slaves.
So if he's not here for us to eat, he needs to go back with his mom. No, he stays here.
Latchbreaker scoffed and rolled her eyes and walked around in their little pocket. The soil was still loose and cool to the touch, but not freezing down here.
Have you lost your mind? I mean, I knew you were weird, but this is too much. I've never asked you for anything, and you knew who I was when you met me. This is the one thing I'm asking of you.
The one thing? I've left all my family, everything I've ever known, because I trusted you. My family didn't believe you, but I did, and I chose to stay with you.
Great, and now you get to live. So, because of that, I would think that the least you could do is just listen to me, this one thing that I want. Just let me have it.
So you want a pet? Where there's so little to eat already?
Yes, Latch, I want a pet.
Please, I just want my mom. I'll go back up myself. You don't even have to bring me back up there.
The lava channels will be merging. This whole region is going to be covered in magma. You're not going anywhere.
Weeks and then months went by, and Connie never left the entrance. She had stuck her neck down as far as it would go, and she enlisted the entire herd to try and dig down. She would get marginally far as grape scorers could go. Her kind never evolved to dig, and so there she remained frozen, along with the bodies of all of her herd mates and her other child. Rogototh galloped quickly, hopping over the magma pockets, Latchbreaker right beside him.
I see, you're losing your edge.
Not really fair, I'm filled with eggs. You wait till I lay them, then we can have this match over.
Fair enough.
Rogototh slowed down to let his mate catch up.
No, you don't. Don't slow down on my account.
Both of you losers are slow, said Kelly as she charged past them. Chomp Treaders were amazing adaptable animals. Their genetics determined what their physical features would look like, but a large part of that was due to their adaptability, the reason why they've lived so very long. Down here, even though the soil of the land is cool, living by the magma pockets, Kelly has grown a tougher armor than that of her parents, and the ability to shed excess heat through her dorsal protrusions. Kazoo, come on, keep up! Yeah, we're gonna eat you. Not funny, Mom. Latchbreaker chuckled to herself. That's a little funny. In comparison with her large mother, Kelly was now half her size, while Rogototh towered over the entire family. But there is one person who Kelly felt like she was on the same level with. Kazoo, who would have become her adopted brother. He raced beside her, keeping up with her. He could feel the heat radiating from her body. And he too had learned to evolve down here, as best as he could anyway. The years passed, and Kazoo grew up with Rogototh's family. Rogototh had told him the many stories about Kaz, his father. After all, Kazoo didn't really get to know him that well. And in many ways, what drew Kazoo to Rogototh is that he could see elements of his own father from Rogototh. Kaz did raise him after all, and whoever you raise, you put a little of yourself in them.
So when do you think will be a good time for us to go back up? Well, it's been a few years. I guess we could go up and check.
Rogo walked ahead and then turned back to look at Kazoo.
You coming? Me? Oh, I thought Latchbreaker, she's indisposed while she's resting, developing her new clutch. And you are becoming a nice young adult. You should start to, learn. Oh dear me, are you fathering right now? Shut up.
Rogototh rolled his eyes and walked away. Kazoo walked behind him.
Oh my gosh, you are. How sweet! Listen, I can still chomp your neck to pieces. Yeah, well, I'm growing those little, puffy, squeezy acid things on my face. You ain't grown them yet. Oh, please, old man, with those skinny old legs of yours, all I gotta do is just run into them, and you go toppling like a whole sap tree. You really like tempting fate, don't you? And why not? It's what brought us together, isn't it?
The both of them walked back towards the area where they made a very gradual incline and steps towards the surface. As they prepared to go outside for the first time in years, they looked at each other and took a deep breath. Rogototh, using his jaws and his claws, tore down the sealant to let in the frigid air. They took a deep breath, smiled at each other, and went outside. Back below the surface in the nest, Kelly walked up to her mom. She opened her jaws to release some small chomped-up creatures. This is all I could find, Mom. I'm sorry. I'll look for more later on. Are you kidding? This is amazing, Kelly. You're such a good hunter. Also, these things, I could never catch these, and I love them. Where's your father? Went to the surface? Yeah, and he took Kazoo. Kelly curled up next to her mom. Hey, Mom. What's gonna happen when we do have to go to the surface? Well, we look for the survivors of our kind and just continue living. We're only down here to survive the cold. I mean, what's gonna happen with Kazoo? Is he gonna go back to his family? Kelly, Kazoo doesn't have a family. They did. Right, Kelly said, nodding and looking into space. I mean, I kind of thought that we were his family, but... Kelly whipped her head to look up at her mom. Excuse me? What? Did you just say that Kazoo is our family? Well, he's staying with us and we haven't eaten him, so I thought that's what you guys... What? Nothing. Kelly smiled and nuzzled her mom. Nothing at all. You're making me uncomfortable. Sorry, I love you. Latchbreaker smiled down at her daughter, snuggled beside her. She looked in the direction of the surface. All she could see was dirt and rock in their little cave area. She didn't want to admit it to anyone, but she had fallen in love with a little grape scorer. He made her family happy, and for her, that meant that he was family too. Life was simpler, knowing that Kazoo was down there with them. She had no idea how complicated it would get if they were to go back to the surface and Kazoo were to find his own kind. But for now, as she waited to lay her eggs, she enjoyed the simple life they had, and she thanked the stars that she had met Rogototh. He saved their lives. He gave her a future. And quite possibly, he secured the future of their kind.